Hey everybody, this is Max Gersht here from Marcus and Millichap, and we have Greg Burns from IPX 1031 here with us as well. And we're going to be discussing the different 1031 exchange limitations that are being discussed in Congress right now, and cover some other points as well. So just wanted to jump in here, Greg. So what exactly is being discussed in regards to limiting the 1031 exchange or removing it altogether?
So, hi Max. Obviously we've been kind of tracking this for a while. Initially, when President Biden was running for office, he mentioned that he wanted to do away with 1031, and then once he got elected, he mentioned it a couple times, and then it kind of went silent. And then we kind of talked to his tax team, and they didn't really mention anything of it. He got elected. We didn't hear anything about it. We were talking to our local, our elected officials in the Senate and the House, and they had not heard anything about it. And then, about a week and a half ago, he came out and said in his tax proposal that he wanted to limit 1031 to 500,000, which, along with a bunch of other proposals as well. So that's kind of where that started from.
Got it. And is this something that, from your point of view, does this look like it's going to go into effect this year? Do we know,
So the president, fortunately, doesn't make tax laws. So the tax laws typically, this is going to be written probably by the House Ways and Means Committee. And so in order for this to come to fruition, it would have to be put in a bill. As of right now, there is no bill. We're hopeful that we aren't in a bill. They're talking about things like, increasing, capital gains taxes, which I think is something that probably will happen. They're talking about increasing it significantly. I don't know if that's going to happen. The problem with, increasing capital gains taxes that much is it almost is diminishing returns. Once you get over about 27 or 28%, things you think you're going to get more revenue, but you actually get less, because the tax rate is too high and people just won't sell. They're talking about, playing with the corporate tax, although Mitch McConnell came out and said, we're willing to work with you guys on, these proposals, but what we're not willing to do is go in and make changes to that 2017 tax reform bill that we put together. So in that 2017 tax reform bill, they lowered corporate taxes from 28 to 21%. And so if they're saying, hey, we're not willing to look at that, maybe that's something that they're going to have to revise. We'll just have to kind of see. But as far as, from what we can tell, any changes that are made are not going to be retroactive. So if they do, in fact, put together a bill and they do, in fact, make some tax changes, those will be effective based on all the information that all the people we've talked to, that they'll be effective the beginning of 2022.
Understood. Okay. And I guess going back to, the initial limitations of $500,000 for the 1031 exchange. I mean, are you pretty confident that something like that's going to pass, or do you feel like, that doesn't really have a chance?
Problem with the limiting 1031 to 500,000 is that, the asset classes that really are going to need the most help coming out of this pandemic are going to be office and retail. Those are two, asset classes that are more on the expensive side. And so limiting it to 500,000 could, dramatically impact, real estate. I mean, if you, limited 1031 to a gain of 500,000, especially in places like California where there's a lot of appreciation, and you increase capital gains taxes to what the president was proposing, there would be no more, commercial real estate would screech to basically, a halt, because you just could not get clients to sell and pay their capital gains taxes, and they're not going to sell, and it can't do an exchange. So basically it just locks up the real estate market.
Got it. And so for any of our clients watching this, or anybody out there who is thinking about doing a 1031 exchange, if they were to do something this year and something like this passes next year, you're saying it would not go back, most likely would not go back retroactively, right? So they can do as many exchanges as they want this year, but they can't do anything next year, or if it passes next year.
Yeah, so if it passes, it's going to be something that, that takes effect in 2022. Now, I can't guarantee that. But the person I spoke to somebody, fairly high up at the National Association of Realtors, whose job is to speak with elected officials, about, tax policy and when tax policy is going to take effect. And he said definitively that every member of Congress that he spoke to said that this would not be retroactive. So he's, confident that it will not be retroactive. The problem is you have all these people that have done exchanges this year, and they'd be in a situation where they could be in a situation where they had to sell their real estate because now they've got to pay taxes. So you're just not going to see that happen.
Got it. And just another question. I mean, for anybody watching this that has questions as far as, how is a 1031 exchange, really beneficial for the whole economy, right? People might think that a 1031 exchange is just benefiting, the real estate investors in the real estate market, but it doesn't really help the economy at large. So could you kind of speak to that point and how?
Yeah. So 1031 is just, it certainly is a benefit to, real estate investors, allows them to move in between real estate transactions, but they're just deferring their taxes. They're not tax-free exchanges. So if someone sells a property and they have gain and they do a 1031 exchange, the new property that they buy, they still have gain. But what it does is it allows people to move within the real estate economy, and allows, all kinds of, revenue to be generated by, real estate agents that earn commissions. You have inspectors that do inspections on properties. You have real estate attorneys that get involved in transactions. You have CPAs. You have, mortgage lenders that get involved. You have appraisers that get involved. And in California, since we have Prop 13, where, when I buy a property, let's say I've owned it for the last 30 years and I paid, $500,000 for it. Today it's worth $5 million, right? I'm paying property taxes at a very low rate. And if I sell that property, the new property, the new buyer of that property is paying property taxes at that $5 million rate. And if I do a 1031 exchange and I go buy a new property for $5 million, now I am paying property taxes at that new $5 million rate. So it really generates revenue, not only through, transfer taxes and things of that nature, but also by increasing property taxes. So it generates revenue for local government. So it's really a net win, I think, across the board for, real estate investors, but also from a tax perspective as well.
Got it. Yeah. So there's definitely a whole ecosystem that's driven by the 1031 exchange. I mean, I know for us, I'd say 90% of our clients end up doing 1031 exchanges. That's the bulk of your business. And yeah, so we definitely don't want that going away. Another thing that came up was the step up in tax basis that people keep asking about. Could you kind of talk to that point?
Yeah. So there's a lot of exchangers. It's interesting. Exchange do maybe a couple exchanges throughout their lifetime, and then they ultimately, if they typically cash out and pay their taxes because they need the money or whatever the reason is. But there are some people that use 1031 or use real estate as an estate planning tool. And one of the huge benefits of keeping it in real estate is that when you pass away, your heirs get a step up in basis equal to the fair market value at the time of death. So an example, a very simple example, was my grandmother bought a house in Arcadia. I think she paid like $32,000 for it. When she passed away, it was worth about $800,000, and she had heired that property to my mom. And actually, she used that money to actually take care of her sister, who was had some special needs. But when she passed away, she got a step up in basis to $800,000. So when she sold the house for, I think, a little bit more than 800, but after closing costs, it was less than 800. She got to take that money tax free. So it's a way that you can kind of pass on, money from, to your heirs. And it's interesting because, one of the things that, we're concerned about right now is, especially with minorities, is giving the ability to them to transfer generational wealth from one generation to the other generation. I think if you take away the ability for a step up in basis, it really limits that ability for them to transfer wealth, especially in the minority level, when you've got these this ability to give this money to your heirs, that have them get a step up, and that really kind of was a good way to transfer generational wealth. So I don't think that step up really helps the very wealthy, because you're limited on what you can transfer in real estate by estate taxes. So somebody that's uber wealthy, even under the current guidelines of 22 million being able to be transferred, not get hit with estate taxes, they're looking to potentially drop that number, but that's not uber wealthy. Bill Gates is not, he's not going to be able to, transfer a bunch of real estate and avoid those taxes. And, estate taxes are much more expensive than capital gains taxes. So I think the step up in basis is a really valuable tool for estate planning and for transferring generational wealth.
Got it. So if I'm understanding you correctly, what they're talking about would be, if somebody were to inherit the property, they would have to pay the taxes on the gain at the pass of whoever passed away, or whenever they inherit the property.
Yeah, the challenge with the structure that they're talking about is that if my mom, let's say in that case, inherited that property for $800,000, let's say she didn't want to sell it, she'd be in a situation where she'd have to pay the gain on that, that difference between the $32,000 my grandmother paid it for and the $800,000 that the property was worth, even if she didn't sell it, just Wow. that she inherited it. So it's really would force people to have to sell, these properties. And you have, clients who, maybe they're going to, their plan was to move into their mom's house with their family because it's fully paid for. They may not be able to do that because they might have to sell that property just to pay the taxes.
Right. I mean, and this happens all the time in the commercial real estate world, where, somebody bought something for $1 million in the 70s or 80s, and it's worth like 15, 18, 19 million dollars today. And I mean, that would be a significant increase. And I mean, I don't even know how somebody would get around that, but yeah, I guess they would have to sell.
Yeah, I mean, it just would force people, and the bigger clients, right? So you inherit a property for that kind of money, you're probably going to have to sell off some assets to pay some taxes on it anyway. But, you're really talking about, the client who, bought a property for, $100,000, and today it's worth $700,000 or $800,000 when they pass away. Those are the people it's really going to impact. Wow. And so, and at the end of the day, people look at 1031 as this loophole for real estate investors, but it really doesn't hurt, the top line investors that people talk about, right? So, the publicly traded REITs or real estate companies, they can all afford to pay their taxes. Where it really hurts is, my buddy that, owns a car place that, bought his property for $150,000. And now when he retires, it's going to be worth, let's say, $1 million. And he wants to, 1031 exchange that $1 million property into another property that's going to help him pay for his retirement, because really the real estate has been his 401k. And if he doesn't have the ability to exchange, right, and he's got to pay taxes, then he might not ever be able to retire.
Right.
So that's the people that it's going to dramatically impact. So I think that hopefully, we've spent a lot of time, and I think that our elected officials, they really understand the importance of 1031. And it's really kind of a revenue neutral type of tax code. It's not something that's going to generate a bunch of revenue that we didn't already get. So I think that they understand that, and I'm hopeful that they will not include that in the bill.
Got it. And again, this is, I guess, worst case scenario. If they do include it in the bill, is there anything somebody can do today to prepare their estate? Should they maybe put the property in a trust? Should they keep it in an LLC? How is there any way that this step up, won't affect the next generation?
So the problem is we don't know what it looks like right now, right? So there's just kind of three, lines about, hey, we should limit capital gains taxes on a 1031 to 500,000. We don't really know what that means. Does that mean per taxpayer? Does that mean per year? What does that mean? So we don't really know. I would say, my position is this: when I get a call from a client that says, hey, what do you think about what's going on about all these topics we were just talking about? I said, if you're not in the property that you want to be in long-term today, then you need to sell it today, do a 1031 exchange, get into that property that you want to be in long-term so that you don't have to worry about this. And if 1031 stays in tax code, great. But if it doesn't, then guess what? You're into the property that you want to be in long-term and you don't necessarily have to worry about it.
Right. And if somebody's thinking about selling and paying the taxes, then it's likely that this year will be much lower than next year, right?
Yeah, we see a lot of people doing that. We see a lot of people that are in a situation like I, talked to a client today that was in an exchange. He opened an exchange. He was out looking for property. He is kind of coming towards the end of his 45 days. He can't find something that he absolutely loves. So he's just going to pay his taxes. So the bottom line is that he just says, you know what? I can't find a property that I really love. And so, tax rates are relatively low. They're definitely going to be, they're lower now than they're going to be in the future. So I'm just going to go ahead and pay my taxes. So,
right.
If you had a client, if you have somebody that's thinking about selling in the next 4 to 5 years and cashing out, today's that day. It's not, definitely, you're talking about, for sure you're going to pay somewhere between 7 and 8% more. And if you're a high income earner, that is going to be, you're going to be a lot higher than 7 or 8%.
Got it. Okay. So the advice today is if anybody's thinking about making any moves in the next 2 to 5 years, call Max Gersht today. And then once you're ready to exchange, you get in touch with Greg Burns, right? That's kind of the
that's
message.
Right. That's right. Message is, if you're thinking about doing something in the next couple of years, now's the time.
Do it now. Okay. And then I guess, is there anything that we can do as the real estate community, the investors today to try to mitigate any of these things that are that potentially, are going to put us at risk?
Yeah, so we do have, so you can go to our website and take action. It's www.ipx1031.com. There's a big action bar where you can go to where you can, write your senator or congresswoman and send them a letter telling them that you support 1031. We already have the letters, are already pre-done. It's very simple. It literally would take your clients all of about 5 minutes. And if they're also concerned about, capital gains, if they're also concerned about step up in basis, that's, they're going to have those resources there to go ahead and send letters on those topics as well. So I encourage everybody to, to try to take action to, let their elected officials know that it's important that 1031 are made in the tax code, and hopefully will not be in the bill.
Amazing. Well, I think that we kind of covered everything that we wanted to cover. Is there anything else that you want to add in closing?
No, I just think that advanced planning is key to an exchange. So if you decide, hey, I'm thinking about selling my asset and I want to do X or Y or whatever it may be, make sure that you get a hold of Max, sit down, talk to him, make sure that you get an executable plan in place before you think about selling. And or if you're thinking about selling and you're thinking about maybe going to a passive type of investment or whatever it be, call Max, talk to him, get a plan in place so that you're not just saying, okay, well, I want to sell and I don't really know what I want to buy. It's important that you get a plan in place to make sure that you can complete a successful exchange.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And obviously, if anybody is in an active exchange right now, or they just put their property in escrow and they're looking for an accommodator, Greg Burns is the person you want to be in touch with.
Yeah, for sure.
And well, again, I really appreciate it. And I think this was very helpful. And I'm sure we're going to be in touch down the line again. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Max.
All the best.